Honourable Member for Stormont-Dundas-South Glengarry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and appreciate the opportunity to participate in the adjournment proceedings tonight. Madam Speaker, I'll give a candid comment that I have said to several constituents over the course of the last few weeks as we've debated the many issues facing the City of Ottawa specifically, but our country. I cannot wait until we can come to the floor of the House of Commons and not talk about COVID or convoys. And I want to follow up on my supplemental question that I asked in question period a few weeks ago about a reopening plan from this government. This should be, as I've said before, a happy time for our country. We are seeing the latest variant of COVID-19, the severity drop. We've seen the surge begin to eliminate itself. We've seen public health data, and we've seen public health experts that say that now we are in a phase of this pandemic, thankfully, that we don't have to live in fear. We can learn to live with COVID and adjust our public health measures to do so. A few weeks ago, in our Opposition Day motion, Madam Speaker, we simply asked for a plan. It was voted down by the government and the NDP, not because of science, but I believe because of politics. It was reasonable at this point in the game, and it wasn't unrealistic. Several provinces, provincial premiers, leaders, and leaders around the world, similar to the situation that Canada has faced during this pandemic, have given their citizens hope to say there's light at the end of the tunnel, and here's the plan, here's the metrics, here's the benchmarks to know that we're finally getting to the end of this pandemic. Here's when we can see some closure and some advancement on getting back to normal. I had to laugh, Madam Speaker. We voted down, the motion was voted down, and 2 days later, the NDP stood up in question period and said, we need a plan. We just voted against it 3 days before, but nevertheless, we're still here, unfortunately, in a situation where, yes, things have certainly been tense in our country the past few weeks, the past few months. A lot of constituents say, and rightfully so, there's a difference between federal restrictions and measures that have been put in place and provincial ones. A lot of provincial premiers and leaders have shown plans and timelines and made progress. And at the federal level, we don't see that same leadership. We've asked the government numerous times to provide the science and data that shows the reason for mandates and some of the measures that they're responsible for, that these things are still in place. And we've gotten silence back. But others are speaking up in this country, Madam Speaker. I think of many border communities in the province of Ontario where home is to me, the city of Cornwall, the port of entry there, and SD&G. Local mayors and tourism businesses are wanting to see the restrictive measures at land borders finally and rightfully lifted. And there's been leaders, for example, like Mayor Drew Duncan in the city of Windsor. So what I think we need to do is, his quote, is to trust Canadians to make smart decisions. We've asked people to get vaccinated. That is the high watermark here of the pandemic. But having a requirement for a test is really an optical illusion for safety. It is really providing no protection, unquote. Dilkins and his counterparts said the science doesn't support testing of this kind, and it remains a barrier for those looking to cross land borders between Canada and the U.S. We also still have on this table from the government the idea of an interprovincial mandate for truck drivers, which would be extremely inappropriate considering the data and public health advice and the direction that provincial leaders in many countries around the world. My question to the government, again, my supplemental is, what are the metrics? What are the timeframes? Where's the hope to get back to a semblance of normalcy, to get back to normal? Canadians have been more than patient. They've done their part, and there's no reason why at this point in the game they can't have a detailed plan, Madam Speaker.
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I thank the honourable member, although the question that he asked me was not the question that I was given to respond to. So just before I do respond, with the speech that I was given, I would just say COVID isn't listening to Parliament. COVID isn't listening to politicians. So when we talk about providing a plan, 2 years ago, almost to the day, we were hit with a pandemic that none of us ever expected to see, and I'm very proud of how our government has responded, and I was really proud at the beginning of the pandemic how all the parties came together in March of 2020. I remember a press conference when all parties were saying we need to pull together. That changed over the months, unfortunately, and I mean, I wish in March of 2020 somebody could have said, okay, in 2 weeks' time, this is what's going to happen, but none of us knew, none of us expected it. So to say that the government needs to say what the plan is, we've never been able to say that because we don't know what this virus is going to do. I think we've acted responsibly. We've always had the health and safety of Canadians at the heart of every decision that we've made, and I think that's the most important thing we can do, and I think it's important that the opposition work with us. And I think it's important that we work together, and we're always open to hearing constructive ideas from the opposition, from all parties in this House, and from all members of this House as to the best way forward. So, Madam Speaker, I don't know how much time I have left, but I was under the understanding that the question was going to be about the implementation of the Emergencies Act. And so I would like to just touch on part of that, only because I think that it's important to highlight the importance of our national unity and the leadership of the government. And I think Canadians are looking for the country to come together. I think they're looking for all of us to listen to each other in a respectful way. Over the last few months, we seem to have lost the ability to agree or disagree agreeably. I do not say that the honourable member to whom I am addressing through you, Madam Speaker, who asked the question, he, in my experience, has always had the ability to disagree agreeably, and I appreciate that. And I know that our government appreciates those who do come to these really difficult issues in ways that are constructive. But unfortunately, the rhetoric, the misinformation created in our country, a peaceful country, protests, and that peaceful protests that turned into an occupation, that turned into convoys that were blocking trade. In my community of Oakville, North Burlington, we saw Fort of Canada with layoffs. We moved away from having those dialogues. So I think the conversation is important, but it's unrealistic to say that we can present a plan for something that won't be listening to anything that we say. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
So I'm not sure which matter was being brought before the House because I don't have that in front of me at this point. So there may have been someone may have gotten the signal wrong on it, but I'll allow the honourable member to do up his last minute, and the honourable parliamentary secretary will be able to respond. The honourable member for Stormont-Dundas-South Glengarry.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I apologize for any hiccups that may be there, but it was relatively relevant to the topic. I think for sure the Emergencies Act is an example was something that we were confronted with as Parliament in the past few weeks as well. I will just say this to my honourable colleague. We are now into year 3 of the pandemic, and the light at the end of the tunnel is here. It's not politicians that are saying that out of turn. We are hearing more public health leaders and experts that are saying this. We are at a time where we can start to end federal mandates, where people can get back to work and get their livelihoods back and do so safely. We can have federal public service workers return to downtown Ottawa to get our economy back going again in the city of Ottawa in Eastern Ontario. We're at a spot now where we can rule out the need for an interprovincial truck mandate. We can look for travel and tourism at our land borders, which is very important to the city of Cornwall in my region. And I would just say for travel and tourism, time is of the essence. A plan and metrics and light and hope, optimism is needed for the many people that rely on American visitors coming up using our land borders each year. So I would encourage the government once again to please do so, get a plan, get back open, end mandates, and get back to normal.
The honourable parliamentary secretary.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I couldn't agree more that we need optimism and we need hope. And I would say that in the fall, I think we all were feeling that. I know I renewed my season's tickets to my favorite lacrosse team. I had gone to a game. It felt like we were moving out of it. And I don't think any of us here expected the devastation that Omicron brought, the challenges that our healthcare system had. most of these mandates that people are frustrated with are actually put in place by the provincial governments. So when we were faced with something that none of us expected back in the fall, government had to react to that. And I think I agree that we need to be hopeful. I agree we need to be optimistic. And I know that all of us want to return to the before times. But with all due respect, I'll go back to what I said before. COVID isn't listening to us. We don't know what kind of thing is going to happen in the future. We need to be nimble. We need to be able to react to that. And I thank the honourable member for his constructive comments. Thank you, Madam Speaker.